Welcome back to Bottomline Africa. Now, today marks the 6th UN International Day of Women and Girls in Science, an important day in global economics, with reports indicating that women have been at the forefront of the fight against COVID-19. We are speaking in this conversation to biodiversity researcher, Professor Amina Gurib Fakim, who is also the 6th president of the Mauritius Biodiversity Scientists. Professor, many thanks for staying with us. Now, the theme of this assembly today will have special focus on the social and cultural dimensions in science. Like you mentioned earlier, women researchers make up only about 30% of researchers in the world. And according to UNESCO, around only 30% of women and girls, female students worldwide, select science and technology-related courses. So basically, this is something that has been built by long-standing biases and gender stereotypes, driving women away from science and technology. How do we begin to change this from the grassroots level?
I think I will focus these two changes around two words: structure and stereotype. I think stereotype we all know because we keep telling our girls that science is for boys, engineering is for boys, and girls should do social studies and should do linguistic. And I think this is the damage that we do to our girls at a very young age. And then if you look at the books that we actually give our girls to study sciences, we find that very often it is enmeshed with stereotype. And this is something that we have to address up front if we are to be able to empower more girls in the sciences. Then in terms of the structure, again, we find that there are big issues in terms of making sure that girls, for example, go to school and they have access to all the facilities. And so these are things that we have to address at our level. And in terms of structure, we also need to look at how much is invested in that space for girls to be able to stay in the sciences. And unfortunately, on our continent, when it comes to looking at education, it is still not perceived as an investment. And yet it is, because we're investing in the human capital of our continent, we're investing in our youth, and we also have to invest in the ecosystem that will ensure that the boys and the girls together, they stay in the sciences and they study and develop ideas. And also one more important thing, what kind of education are we imparting to our kids? Is the education fit for purpose? I mean, these are things that we have to relook at the curriculum so that this education stays relevant. Because one thing that we are not really grappling with is that if you look at the ILO figures, it will tell you that over 60% of the kids who are born or about to be born will work in areas that don't yet exist. Right. So we are looking at running in terms of addressing the goals of the fourth industrial revolution.
Absolutely. Now, Sustainable Development Goal number 9 talks about countries building resilient infrastructure, promoting inclusivity and sustainable industrialization, fostering innovation. How then can governments, especially those, party to the Sustainable Development Goals, facilitate the inclusivity of women and girls in science?
Well, I think we have to promote equal access in terms of education, because I don't think in many parts of the world education is accessible to one and all. We have to address this as a human right issue, although it is not free, I agree. But in my country, education became free in 1976. And this, to me, has been one of the landmark moments that have ensured that women can have access to good education and, of course, has helped the country in its economic development. Now, this is one of the issues that we have to keep on promoting, that education has to be given. And then I have added another layer in terms of quality education, because I don't think the quality of education I got when I was a child is still valid to my daughter, and it will be even less valid one day to my granddaughter. So this is what we have to keep on looking at. But when we look at education as a tool, we look at education as a tool towards job creation. We look at education in terms of relooking at our values, in terms of relooking at our culture. And this is something which has been pushed to the back burner for too long and has to go forward. Because it's only when we relook at our culture, we relook at education, we relook at our history, we will be able to find this third way to make us adapt to climate change, for example. So we need to really have a good, serious look at our education in all spheres. And this is, again, comes with investment.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Reports say that COVID-19 expanded the gender disparities for women in science, especially those at the early start of their career. And we also have, of course, education being disrupted globally. Most girls, school-going age being subjected to doing house chores as society stereotypically would have them do. How globally can we begin to reverse the effects of COVID-19, especially in the science-related field for women and girls?
What COVID has done, it has revealed, or it has exposed and revealed an existing and ongoing situation. I'll just take one example. When women decide to have a family, very often they take leave, of course, of work, and they go home, they have the baby, they look after the child. And by the time that woman is ready to come back to the job arena again, well, sometimes she might have lost the job altogether because, people have, the companies or the institution have replaced her. So if, assuming she gets back, she finds that she's, of course, well behind her colleagues who have pushed ahead in terms of producing publications and, of course, getting research grants. And she finds herself at a disadvantage. And yet, if we look at the policies which have been put in place in some areas of the world, they have put in place where these policies are feminine friendly, they are mother friendly, and this woman can get back into her workplace even though she has a small child. So these are, again, family-friendly policies we have to look at to ensure that the woman is not being excluded. Mm-hmm. What the COVID has done is exactly that. And of course, in much shorter time, the woman finds herself at home, having to look after the family. She doesn't have time because to go out, and she doesn't have time at all to spend time on her job because she's there full time now with the baby and with the family. So all this the COVID has exposed that. The other thing that COVID has shown as well is in terms of abuse. How many women have been confronted with this in their homes when they've had to live with a violent partner? So all these issues are impacting women more than ever before. So these things have to be addressed. Having said this, the COVID has also highlighted that there are green shoots if we take this up seriously on the continent. How, for example, investing in IT space, how investing in ICT by countries can also help these women start their enterprise from home and, of course, be able to do a lot of transactions online. So these are opportunities that have to be taken up rather fast, but we need, of course, governments who can really react very, very fast and, of course, take the appropriate decision and, of course, put in the investment rapidly into these green shoots.
Absolutely. But either way, it is a day to celebrate as we see more women and girls venture into the world of science. We cannot finish this conversation, Professor, without your experiences. You are the 6th president of the Mauritius Biodiversity Scientists. You are at the center of the phytotherapy research as well. Talk to us about your experience as a woman in science and how that is going for you.
Again, I experienced the same problem, the same stereotype when I was a child, because when I finished my A-levels, you also have the same system in Kenya, is I went to the career guidance officer and I said, look, I want to do science. The first thing that gentleman came up with says, why do you want to do science? Because it's for boys, and also when you come back, there'll be no job for you. But again, this is something that we will be able to address, this kind of stereotype messaging that we need to get rid of, because when we have more women in science, more prominent women who can act as a role model, more prominent women who can mentor a lot of these girls, take them by the hands and move ahead. But more importantly, the message we have to say on this day of International Day for Women and Girls in Science is believe in yourself. Never doubt, listen to your heart, listen to your head, and move ahead onto what you like. Make your work become your passion, and never give up on your dreams. So this is what I did, and I've never regretted it.
That's a great way to end this conversation. Professor, many thanks for your time. That is Professor Amina Gurib Fakim. She is the 6th president of the Mauritius Biodiversity Scientists, and she is speaking to us about the United